Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us on this Physicians on Call Live. And tonight we have Dr. Greg Feinsinger with us. And I'm really thrilled and pleased to be sitting with Dr. Feinsinger. The work I have done and has been inspired and initially brought on with witnessing what Dr. Feinsinger has done with his patients. And we'll have him talk a little bit more about all of that. He's now retired, but before he retired, he helped a lot of people with food. And since then, he's been publishing a weekly article in the newspapers, probably written about 150 articles at this point, and in process of publishing a book with these articles. And also, before I turn this over to Dr. Feinsinger, we also have with us V. Lynn Hawkins. Say hi.
Hello, everyone, and welcome.
V. Lynn's done a magnificent job with the project management. She's a star in social media marketing and business development and helping entrepreneurs succeed. We then also will have, we also have Lisa Arnold with us, and Lisa is a certified consultant with plant-based nutrition. She's been certified through eCornell. And say hi, Lisa.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here.
And Lisa is a pod leader in Houston for Plant Pure Nation. She's a very passionate advocate and consultant with plant-based lifestyle. So with that, we'll ask Dr. Feinsinger to make some comments on all his work and a little bit more information. Perhaps if you could also tell us about some of your patient success stories, that'll be great. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Feinsinger.
Well, at the risk of being repetitive, because I think all of you watched my short interview or video that Peter made a couple of months ago, and as I said before, it's been a while since I looked at that, so I don't remember exactly what I said, but I know that I kind of talked about my story a little bit, but. So I was a family physician for 42 years, and as a family physician, I was always interested in prevention because we see people cradle to grave. And tell me if I'm just repeating what I said before.
That's fine. I'm sure a lot of people will be very interested in.
But we deliver babies and we take care of older people in nursing homes, and then we see people in between. And so after a couple of years of practice, you start seeing middle-aged and older people with diseases that are totally preventable. And you start thinking maybe we should be preventing these diseases instead of just waiting till they happen. So as you probably know, we don't really have a healthcare system in this country. We have a disease management system. And we wait until diseases occur and we try to manage them. And this costs a lot of money. For example, in 2016, and it was $3.2 trillion that we spent on this system, disease management system, and this situation is not financially sustainable. And it's thought that if everybody in this country started exercising every day and started eating more fruits and vegetables, not even going 100% of the way necessarily, just eating more fruits and vegetables every day, that we could save 75% of that $3.2 trillion. And it's getting up towards $4 trillion now. So we have to do something. We have a lot of problems with our healthcare system. And I belong to a physician group called Physicians for a National Health Plan. That we believe in Medicare for all is the only thing that's going to fix the system. But I come from it a little bit differently. I mean, if everybody ate the way that we all think they should eat, at least Peter and I think they should, and I think all of you, who I've met so far, then then we wouldn't have people getting sick in the first place, and we wouldn't have all these chronic diseases. And so what are we talking about with these chronic diseases that afflict so many people and cause so much misery and early death? We're talking about obesity and high blood pressure and high cholesterol, cardiovascular disease, which refers to heart attacks and strokes, heart attacks being the biggest killer in this country, dementia, including Alzheimer's, autoimmune diseases such as MS, for example, type 1 diabetes, inflammatory diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis, and many kinds of cancer, especially cancer of the breast and colon and prostate. So people wouldn't be suffering from all these diseases. We save a lot of lives, a lot of misery, a lot of disability, and a ton of money. So to me, that's the real answer, is just to get people eating that way. And I actually went to a blue zone talk yesterday. I'm sure you're all familiar with the blue zones, right? These pockets of people in the world who seem to live a long time and don't get these chronic diseases that we suffer from. So, for example, Okinawa, although that's changing as they get to start eating a more Western diet. A place in Costa Rica, a certain part of Sardinia, and a few other places in the world where people eat a plant-based diet throughout life from the day they're born. And so so the Blue Zone, the author of the Blue Zone wrote his book several years ago now, and he's written several books since then. But the author or the speaker last night was the author's brother, and he's works on what's called the Blue Zone Project. And so they are actually starting this project in some towns in the United States, and so far they've been very successful in getting people to do what the Blue Zones people eat, which is moving a lot more than most Americans move about, not necessarily going to the gym and doing really intense exercise, but just moving every 20 minutes is what people in the blue zones tend to move. Walk a little bit or do something physically active every 20 minutes. And I mean, their other secret is that they're mainly plant-based in these blue zones.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And well, let me move on. We have somebody with us who's actually tried one of the recent fad diets, and I'm sure you can comment on some of these diets that have come and gone and some that are still around. But I'd like to introduce Ron Tannenbaum. Say hi, Ron.
Hello.
Okay, and I'd like to invite Ron to briefly describe his recent experience, and Dr. Feinsinger, I'd like for you to comment and shed some light on what all it is that Ron's experienced.
Okay, I'll do my best.
I'm sure.
So I would say that
Tell me what happened.
I'd say that I was on the typical Western diet up until about 8 months ago, and I ate excessively and freely. And then I started to become overweight, and something that I noticed a lot, and I was doing a lot of research and decided to go on the Whole30 diet as a personal challenge to reduce my consumption, as well as sort of press the reset button on my eating habits. I have to say that I was really happy with it. I ended up doing that diet for 8 months. It allowed me to cut or kick my addiction to sugars, to chemicals. I focused mostly on fruits and vegetables, and I supplemented with a good amount of meat. And it seemed to be working out well for me in terms of the way I feel. So I lost weight, for example, and things like that.
Excuse me. I'm
yes?
sorry, Ron, can you turn your volume up? Is it all the way up?
I believe so. Let me speak closer to the microphone name.
Okay.
Essentially, about 2 weeks ago, I was diagnosed with gout, and I attribute this primarily to the way I was treating my body in the Whole30 diet. While it was helping me eliminate sugars and things like that, I did a lot of replacements with meats, and I believe that I overate meat. Since then, for the past 2 weeks, I've refocused on a vegetarian diet, on a primarily vegetarian diet, and I did this to give myself the relief I need and to eliminate my pain. And now I'm trying to tune my diet, understand better what I should be eating, and continue to tweak the way I eat in terms of becoming healthier, obviously eliminating inflammations, and sort of dealing with the issue. And my question is really, is there a diet that's specific for gout, or a lifestyle of eating that's specific for gout that I can sort of focus on to help myself never have to deal with this again?
Would you like me to repeat some of that?
Well, I think I got the gist of it. So I take it that before you went on this diet you're talking about, where you developed gout, you didn't watch a movie called Supersize Me. Have you heard of that documentary?
I've heard of that, and I've seen that, but it wasn't. I mean, it was a diet that I thought was obviously better than it is, and it was one that I looked at when I looked at my diet and said, okay, this is something that I could achieve without feeling like I was missing something so much that I was just prone to cheating and just going back to my old ways.
Okay, well, I mean, the short answer to your question is that people who are on a total plant-based whole foods, meaning unprocessed foods, diet with no salt, sugar, or added fat, basically don't get gout, and they tend to have low uric acid levels. And that's in spite of the fact that, gout is made worse supposedly if you eat a lot of purines. And there are some vegetables that have purines. But it's interesting, according to Dr. Greger, who is kind of my hero in all this, wrote a book called Eat to Live, and also has a wonderful website called nutritionfacts.org. He's completely unbiased. Doesn't have any, he's got a nonprofit, and he has no ties to the food industry or big pharma or anything like that. But he, according to some evidence that he presented on his website, animal purines will definitely contribute to gout, whereas for whatever reason, plant purines don't. And I think that can be explained by the fact that we really evolved as human beings to eat plants. The human genome was developed over a 20 million year period of time as we gradually evolved from plant-eating tree dwellers. And so the paleo people say, well, but then everybody was hunter-gatherers. Well, first of all, everyone didn't become hunter-gatherers, but the main point is that most of the human genome, if not all of it, had already been developed by the time people were hunter-gatherers. And even when they were hunter-gatherers, a lot of them were mainly gatherers. It's a lot easier to go out and gather nuts and seeds and things like that than it is to go hunt meat. And our jaw structure is that of herbivores, not carnivores, and the structure of our gastrointestinal tract is also that of herbivores. So I think that that's what we're genetically meant to be eating, and I think the reason we have so many of these problems, including gout, is that we're eating a diet, when we eat the standard American diet, certainly, that we're not genetically meant to be eating, and we get into trouble because of that. Does that kind of answer your question?
Kind of. I'm wondering if there's, is that the only answer? Should I switch to an all plant-based diet, or is there some amounts of meats or purine-based items that I can tolerate, that the body can tolerate without inflammation, or is really the answer that I shouldn't be doing that at all?
Well, it really depends on what your goal is. If your goal is simply to avoid gout, then the things that we know for sure tend to cause gout are a lot of meat, especially organ meats, liver and kidneys and things like that, and red meat, and then alcohol seems to contribute as well. So those things you for sure want to avoid. But I think the goal of most people is to live a long, healthy life, live to a ripe old age if we continue to have good quality of life. And that means, we want our mind intact, we want our vision intact. In other words, we don't want to get diabetic retinopathy or macular degeneration. Still want to be able to see in our older years.
Mm-hmm.
And we want our mobility intact, so we're not being pushed around in a wheelchair. So if that's what you want, which I think most of us do, then we have to look at the main causes of death. And so the main causes of death in this country, and number one is heart disease, number two is cancer, and number three is, believe it or not, errors in our medical system or complications of our medical system. So that means hospital-acquired infections. It means 100,000 people die every year from side effects from medications that are prescribed, and those kinds of things. That's the third cause of death. The main causes of disability are, number one, strokes. If you go to a nursing home, you'll see that most of the people there have had a stroke and they're paralyzed on one side or they can't speak. That kind of sort of thing. So that's poor quality of life. And the second cause of poor quality of life is diabetes. If you have diabetes for long enough, you're going to have eye problems, including blindness. You're going to have cardiovascular disease. You're going to have kidney disease, which can lead to kidney failure, and you're going to have chronic nerve problems in your legs, with numbness and pain that can lead to amputation. And then the fourth cause of disability is dementia. So, if you want to live a long, happy, healthy life, it's wise to go on a plant-based diet, because really there are no 100% guarantees. As a matter of fact, I give a PowerPoint presentation at the very end. I point out that there are no guarantees, and my last slide is a far side cartoon of a tombstone. And it says, "You mean I ate all that kale for nothing?" So there are no guarantees, but I think most of us want to stack the deck in our favor. And if you want to do that, then I think you're wise to go on this plant-based whole foods diet.
Okay.
So, Ron, tell us about, you went to a conventional doctor and he prescribed medications for you, and what
Yes.
were those, and how are you doing with those?
Those are good. I mean, I went from feeling great to not walking and thinking I broke my foot because the pain was so high. So they prescribed anti-inflammatories, and it was a 10-day regimen that I have just completed. There's a daily pill that I'm supposed to take, although I'm going to talk to my doctor about eliminating the daily pill and changing my diet to meet the needs. I already don't drink alcohol. I'm already whole food based, and the only tweak to my diet is that I ate meat, which is something that I'm looking to eliminate. So that should be consistent with basically the requirements of avoiding the issue, and I hope not having to take that pill daily.
What is the medication? What's that pill that you're still taking?
Allopurinol. That's the one that I take daily.
Yeah, so, and what was the anti-inflammatory? Indocin or?
No, it was prednisone. Prednisone?
Oh, prednisone, okay. Yeah, so prednisone, you certainly don't want to take for very long because it can have a lot of side effects, but allopurinol lowers your uric acid level. So, gout is caused by, most people with gout have high uric acid levels. So we all have some uric acid in our blood. But people with gout have high levels in general, and the uric acid tends to crystallize out in a joint. And it's usually the joint in your big toe. Is that where yours was?
Yeah, yep.
And yeah, it's painful and it's no fun, right?
Very painful.
Yeah, so I mean, do you know what your uric acid level was? Did they check it?
They checked it, and I don't know what the number was. I just know that the doctor said it was very, very high. And that's why, even though it was my first attack, he put me on allopurinol. But I ate a lot of meat. I admittedly ate a lot of meat, and something that I just, because of this, I just wholesale cut out, at least until I figure things out. So I feel like I'm eating all fruits and vegetables and some starches, and everything is plant-based that I'm eating. And so I feel like the tweak is almost there in terms of my diet, and until I resolve my health, I just won't eat meat at all. And then I would love to, that's my, let's say, guilty pleasure. So I hope that I could eat it once a month or something like that, where I could have something special and enjoy, and just not have it as one of the base staples of my diet. But only if it doesn't impact my health or my longevity or things like that. If it does, then I'll cut it out. But
right. Well, yeah, I don't think a guy like you, assuming you don't have other issues, if you're trying to reverse heart disease, I think it's very clear that you need to be 100%, or trying to reverse diabetes or something. If you don't have those conditions, then I think it's not a bad thing to have a little meat once in a while. As a matter of fact, in these blue zones, and I learned this at the talk last night, they eat, in general, in some of the blue zones at least, they eat a little bit of meat about 5 times a month, max. But a little bit means like about the size of your thumb, that much. Maybe that's not what you're thinking of when you said, "Can I eat a little meat?" You have a big thumb. One way. So, how are you doing on the plant-based diet? Has it been difficult?
It was incredibly difficult for the first week. Yeah. And I would say that after that, I was okay. But I think that I would say that I had a very short temperament. I was going through a withdrawal. Yeah. But then after that, I was okay. And it's one of those things that I think I struggled to find out what to replace. And as time goes on, I figure out, like, when I'm hungry, what a better snack is, and I stock it so that I'm not just hungry and scratching my head and staring at a fridge full of things that I shouldn't eat. Yeah. But I've actually sort of reset the home to meet those needs, and so now I'm much more comfortable with it.
Good. Well, you should be eating a bigger volume of food than you used to eat, but it's going to be less calorie dense. That's the thing. And the food industry has people hooked on salt, sugar, and fat. And they actually hire scientists to figure out how to make their food more addictive to people. And they're shameless about putting salt, sugar, and fat in everything, including things for kids, like fruit and for example. So, you have to get rid of those addictions, and it usually takes 10 to 14 days. It sounds like you're over those addictions.
The first addiction.
Most people lose their taste for those things, so then it becomes much easier.
That's where I feel like I am, and I don't monitor my portioning within the fruits and vegetable category at all.
Good.
So, if I'm hungry and I grab an apple and I'm still hungry, I'll grab another one and a banana and whatever. But that's the way that I deal with that. So I eat a lot more than I used to, but I eat giant salads. And that's where I found, because I need the convenience too. I don't very much time for myself to cook or prepare. But I'm lucky enough that Whole Foods is down the street and they have a really good salad bar. So I do a lot of Whole Foods salad bars. That's my staple for lunch almost every day. And then at home in the evenings, I'll cut a salad, I'll eat fruit. And that's where I used to eat a lot of meat and cook meat. And now instead of that, I've eliminated that, and I'm looking to figure out how to replace. I don't know if I'm going to start learning how to make tofu or something like that to go with my food, or something that is heartier. But right now I'm eating a lot of salads, a lot of raw.
Well, that's good, except that, you've got to have a tasty diet or you're going to get tired of it and you're not going to stick with it. So the food has to be tasty. So Peter, did you send that handout of mine to people? Remember I sent it to you?
Right, yeah. And I'm not sure exactly where that stands. We do want to make it available. And Velan, would you comment on that, please?
It will be made available. A lot of the information in the handout was part of the email. So 80% of.
I'm sorry, let me repeat. We're having trouble with our sound here. The information from the handout was incorporated in the email. A lot of it was. So we've used it.
Okay.
Yeah. So if I may, Ron, what were some of the issues? Where was starches and carbs? How did that show up in your diet? And then I also have a question for Dr. Feinsinger. Would it make sense to focus on more alkalizing plants and vegetables, and what would those be?
Well, a plant-based diet in general is anti-inflammatory and alkaline. In general, an animal-based diet is acidic and causes inflammation. So I see people all the time who go on this diet for cardiovascular reasons or so they don't get cancer or whatever. And I always see them back in a month and they say, after 2 weeks, a lot of my aches and pains went away. And that's because it's an anti-inflammatory diet.
Right.
Okay.
But Ron, I think I think you need to look at my handout, and hopefully we can get that to you. And on the back side of it are some books that you ought to read, and in particular some recipe books. And so you got to learn to eat some or cook some tasty plant-based food if you're going to stick with it.
Okay. I agree, because otherwise I'll get bored of it. What Peter said is true. I also did cut out starches. So I had cut out about 8 months ago breads. I cut out regular potatoes, although I ate a lot of sweet potato. I cut out rice. And when I switched to the vegetarian diet, I reintroduced those breads as a replacement. So I've been eating for the past 2 weeks some bread on as limited as I can, but probably 1 or 2 servings a day.
Okay, because whole grains are fine. So you want to be eating lots of a variety of vegetables. and some fruit every day, not fruit juice, but fruit,
Yeah.
and whole grains. So not refined grains. So it's not true that all carbs are bad. Refined carbs are particularly bad. That means like white rice. So Dr. Furman, you know who Dr. Furman is? He wrote a book called Eat to Live and several other books. But he's got this saying, the whiter your bread, the sooner you're dead. So white rice is bad, but black rice is actually good for you. Brown rice is good for you. Although there are issues with too much rice because of arsenic, depending on but so when you go to the grocery store, let me tell you how to figure out what has whole grains, because there's lots of misleading advertising on cereal boxes and bread wrappers and so forth. So you look at the number for total carbs, and then you look at the number for fiber on the food label. And that ratio should be 5 to 1 or less. So that means like 4 to 1 would even be better. So the easiest way to figure this out is to multiply the fiber number by 5. And so I'm looking at some Dave's Killer bread right now in a green wrapper. And it says, 21 whole grains. So you can't always, that doesn't mean much. But if you look at those two numbers, the number for total carbs is 22, and the number for fiber is 5. So if you multiply the fiber number by 5, in this case it would be 25, that number is greater than the number for total carbs, which is 22. So that means it's got a lot of whole grains and a lot of fiber.
Okay.
So you can use that for bread, for pasta, for tortillas, any kind of carbohydrate like that that's made out of grains.
Okay.
Excellent. Ron, was there anything else you'd like to ask Dr. Feinsinger?
No, that was it. I'm just, I appreciate your time. I'm trying to figure out how to tweak and explore the right diet, and I appreciate your time and your guidance. Thank you.
Sure, it's my pleasure, and feel free to call me or email me anytime you want. I'm retired. I've got time and this is my passion. And my contact information, I think, is, hopefully they have that, or at least it's on the handout.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Well, and thank you so very much for coming forth and sharing your experience. I'm sure a lot of people will benefit from it. It's amazing what happens with some of these fad diets, and I absolutely applaud you for taking on shifting your lifestyle and your habits, and that's really at the core of what we're about. And maybe I'll take a second here to talk about to promote ourselves with just one thing for health. Our basic philosophy is that it's taken us decades to get to where we are, and we're looking at changing lifestyle and habits, and so we're trying a baby steps approach, so we can shift it a little bit at a time and learn new things along the way, and end up with a much healthier lifestyle. And with that, I think we have
hang on one second.
Okay, sure.
Ryan, could I just make one other suggestion? Is go to Dr. Greger's website. It's called nutritionfacts.org. So
Yeah.
Nutrition Facts is all one word, nutritionfacts.org. And you can subscribe to it, which I do, and I get a short video from him every day or a short blog. But I'm retired, I have time to look at this stuff. But if you're still working, you can also search things on his website. So go to his website and search gout. And everything he's done about gout will pop up.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks. And with that, I've noticed that we have some questions from other folks, and we have Lisa and Violin who would share those questions. Violin, would you like to go first?
Sure, thank you. I've noticed that on occasion, I get cramps. Thinking about gout just reminded me about those cramps. And one of the things that I've noticed is that going to salads and sticking with salads for a week and lots of water, not only do the cramps not happen, but I think, like you said, I'm recognizing that any swelling that I might have seen has gone away. Is there an issue with eating too much raw vegetables in salads? I've heard people say that, they've had complications because of it. And I'm curious to know.
Well, there are these people out there who are raw food advocates, but most of them recommend raw milk and raw chicken and raw beef and raw everything, not just raw vegetables. So I'm not one of those, first of all. I think it's important to eat some of your vegetables raw, especially cruciferous vegetables. You know what those are, like cauliflower and broccoli and bok choy and Brussels sprouts and so forth.
Okay.
But if you, I've never heard of complications from only eating raw things. What kind of complications have you heard of?
They were telling me like stomach and, intestinal stuff. And it of course will keep you clean as far as, processing what you're eating. And I'm certain that's why you're losing weight as well. And I don't know that I really paid attention to whether or not, obesity was an issue at the time that I was hearing this, but there was some pushback on the concept of going, strictly raw vegetables. And that was the argument that I heard.
There's no reason that I have heard of to just eat raw vegetables, because there are just as many nutrients in cooked vegetables, as long as you don't overcook them, especially if you just lightly steam them. And even frozen vegetables supposedly have as many nutrients as fresh vegetables. So, and I think, it's perhaps more tasty to eat them, at least some of them cooked. The only thing, the reason I said that about cruciferous vegetables is that heating, or including cooking, destroys an important cancer-fighting property that the cruciferous vegetables have. And so, but there are ways around that. So if you're making, let's say, cabbage soup, for example, so cabbage is a cruciferous vegetable, and the cooking is going to destroy this important property. What you can do is to eat some raw broccoli or something just before you eat the cabbage soup, and that way you have this enzyme available that releases this important factor. Or you can eat something like horseradish or wasabi. Any kind of radish is a cruciferous vegetable, so you can eat that with your cabbage soup. Or the other thing you can do is chop up the cabbage an hour before you make the soup, and that allows the enzyme time to work and do its thing and release this factor. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, and thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you for your question. Lisa, you have some questions that people have been asking?
I do. Dr. Feinsinger, should we get a certain ratio of starches versus green leafy vegetables and other colorful vegetables?
Yeah, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sure. Should we get a certain ratio of the starchy vegetables versus the green leafy vegetables and other colorful vegetables? Do you have a ratio that we should maybe strive for?
Well, I can tell you what Dr. Esselstyn says about that. So he spoke in Carbondale about 3 years ago, and he and his wife stayed at our house for 2 nights, so I got to know him pretty well. And he says, don't eat your food with a calculator. Okay? And what he means by that, he says that if you present your body with a symphony of nutrients, is the way he puts it, by eating fruits and vegetables and whole grains, it's got an amazing ability to take out what it needs. And you can't go wrong if you do that. But part of your vegetables should be cruciferous vegetables. Part of your vegetables should be legumes. You should eat legumes every day. And as a matter of fact, in the Blue Zone talk that I went to last night, they said the one thing that seemed to make more difference than anything else with the health of these people in the Blue Zones is they all eat a lot of beans every day, or other legumes, but beans in particular. And I think the paleo people don't like beans because there's some starch in them. So I think they're wrong. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
You mentioned colorful vegetables, and fruit. So we say eat the rainbow. So foods with intense flavor, like herbs and spices, have a lot of antioxidants in them, as do foods with intense color. And so if we're talking about vegetables with intense color, that would be like greens, it would be like red cabbage, or it'd be like red onions, yams, that sort of thing. With fruit, it would be especially berries. So bananas would not qualify, they're a white fruit. So berries are the most intensely colored fruit. Oxidation is bad for us. Oxidation is like rusting of metal, or if you cut an apple in half and leave it out, the white of the apple turns brown, that's oxidation. You notice that the peel doesn't turn brown because that's where all the antioxidants are. If you cut a mango in half and leave it out, it doesn't turn brown because it's an intensely colored fruit. Intense color is very important with fruits and vegetables.
Great. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your question. So Dr. Feinsinger, I guess we're coming to top of the hour here. So are there some other things you'd like to comment on? Maybe have a special patient story or something that you think everybody might be able to benefit from?
Well, you've already heard my patient story where I was the patient. I think by writing these newspaper columns, and they're not always about nutrition. I mean, the one that came out today was about the flu shot, which we all ought to be getting. If everybody over 6 months of age ought to get the flu shot. But I had a patient today who, at age 49, several months ago, he had angina, so he had chest pain when he was riding his bike with intensity. And he went and saw the cardiologist, and of course he ended up with a stent. Of course, he wasn't told about another option, which would be plant-based whole foods diet with no added oil. There has been shown by Dr. Esselstyn and Dr. Warnish to reverse the blockage that he had. But he put a stent in, and then he said he has been reading my columns in the newspaper, and because of that, he went on a plant-based diet. And he's already, lost some weight that he needed to lose, and his cholesterol numbers are so low now that his cardiologist told him he could quit his statin drug, which was actually causing some aching in his legs. There are people that, and he might be one of them, who need to keep taking a statin drug, maybe a different one than the one that caused symptoms, but in addition to being on a plant-based diet. But anyway, that's, but by writing these newspaper articles, I think I'm impacting more people than I did when I was seeing, 30 patients a day. Because I have people, I live in a fairly rural area, and if I out and about, I always have people that come up and and tell me that, they read my columns, they went on the diet, they lost 60 pounds, that kind of thing. So that's what keeps me going, because I don't get paid for doing this. And when I say I saw a patient today, I still do free consultations one morning a week about heart attack prevention and or nutrition.
So does anybody else have any other questions we'd like to ask Dr. Feinsinger? Or, let's see, I think we have a couple questions here in the chat. Lisa, you have one.
Sure. I'm just wondering, how does the nutritional value of veggies compare to the nutritional value of fruits? Do you also believe that fruits are as valuable to our health as vegetables?
Yeah, it's not just my belief. I think you have to look at the science, and I think Dr. Greger is a good source of good science.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with Dr. Greger?
Absolutely.
Okay.
He's a rock star in my mind.
Yeah, I think so too. He actually spoke in Carbondale about 1.5 years ago, but he didn't stay at my house, unfortunately. Well, he says, he quoted a study, and I think in his book, How Not to Die, is where he said this, that if you look at just a couple of things that people throughout the world need to be doing more of, it's eating more nuts and more fruit. Now, in America, I think, you certainly have to add more vegetables, because in the rest of the world, they eat more vegetables than we do. But so I don't think it's either or. That's why, when Peter asked me if I could do this, one thing that I'd recommend, it was very difficult for me, because I don't think there is one thing. I think it's a combination of things. I think it's fruit, vegetables, and whole grains, and also nuts and seeds.
Right.
And I saw a question up there, Peter, about plant fats. When you had right here, vegetable fat. And should we avoid all of them? Because the answer to that is no. You should not avoid all of them.
That was, what makes animal fat different from vegetable fats? And should we avoid all of them?
What makes animal fats different?
Different from vegetable fats, and should we avoid all of them?
Oh, no, because it's very, very important that we get the healthy fats, okay? Healthy plant fats. So all plants have polyunsaturated fats, and those are healthy. Some plants also have some saturated fats. Those are unhealthy, and that's one of the reasons that animal fats are so unhealthy, is they're saturated fats. So saturated fats make our liver make more bad cholesterol. The saturated fats are clearly associated with heart disease and diabetes and other things that we don't want to get. Dementia is another thing. So in order to get healthy fats, it's very important you put seeds on your salad, for example, and you want to get unsalted raw pumpkin or sunflower seeds and put them on your salad, because those are a source of good fats, number one. Number two is that the fat in the seeds helps you absorb the fat-soluble vitamins in your greens. And that would be a reason to put some nuts on your like a few almonds or pecans or walnuts on your salad as well. You should eat a handful of walnuts every day. Walnuts are the healthiest fats. So all nuts have some good fats and bad fats, and walnuts have the best ratio of good to bad. And you should definitely eat some ground flaxseed every day, 1 or 2 tablespoons. And they should be ground, because otherwise they go right through you. So your body converts the handful of nuts and also the flaxseed to omega-3, which is important for brain health. Now, in some people, especially as they age, for genetic reasons, their body might not convert enough. And so there are a lot of authorities, including Dr. Greger and Dr. Furman, who think that we should also be eating a supplement of vegan algae-derived omega-3. So not fish oil, because fish oil has the issue of contaminants like heavy metals and things like that. But this is vegan algae-derived, so it comes from algae, omega-3. You can buy it in most health food stores and take somewhere between 250 and 450 milligrams of that a day. That's important for brain health. Now, Dr. Esselstyn, is trying to reverse really bad heart disease. He wrote a book called Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. And he's really hardcore. He doesn't want people to avoid, he wants people to avoid nuts and seeds. And most people think that's too hardcore for most of us, because who wants to have a normal heart if we die from Alzheimer's, And so we want to protect our brains. In order to do that, it's important to get enough omega-3. But we have to understand that Dr. Esselstyn has people with really bad heart disease and he's trying to reverse it. He's also against avocado for the same reason. I think a little bit of avocado is fine, like maybe a quarter of an avocado, but more than that, you're going to get too much of the saturated fat. And coconut's the worst, by the way. Coconut's a plant, but it's almost all saturated fat. And I know there's a lot of hype on the internet about coconut, but it's put on there by people making money selling coconut products.
Okay.
Would that include coconut water?
No, coconut water is basically water with electrolytes in it. But it means avoid coconut milk and coconut oil and, the white coconut.
So coconut oil to cook with and to do like a lot of the home remedies that people use coconut oil for. You're saying avoid that. Is there some substitute that you would suggest?
Yeah, so if a baking recipe calls for oil, you can substitute unsweetened applesauce and or ground flaxseed. To saute, you really don't need oil. You can use water, you can use vegetable broth, you can use wine, you can use vinegar. So you don't, you can avoid oil, and you should avoid oil. Because remember, oil's refined. So you can put a couple of olives on your salad, that's not a problem. Excuse me, the olive oil is refined, and it's kind of like eating white bread. It's you're getting calories without getting nutrients, because in the refining process, you lose most of the nutrients. And a tablespoon of any kind of oil, doesn't matter what kind it is, even olive oil, it's going to have 120 calories.
Okay.
Well, speaking about oils, I guess with Dr. Furman's talk recently, I get the sense that oils basically don't get digested very much. They just clog up the blood system and cause our organs to work extra hard to clean up the blood system, and the blood can't deliver all the nutrients and oxygens and do all the other things it's supposed to do. Do I get the correct impression on that, or
well,
what would you say?
Dr. Furman's fond of these short sayings. So he's got this saying about oil that 2 minutes on the lips and the rest of your life on your hips. Or actually, and another one is 2 minutes from lips to hips. That's the one I was trying to think of, actually. 2 minutes from lips to hips. So what he means by that is that if you eat oil, like a tablespoon of olive oil or something, or dip your bread in olive oil, which they don't even do in Italy, by the way. You digest, you absorb the oil very quickly through your gut into your bloodstream, and it's deposited almost immediately as fat on your hips. So that's what he means by that. Another problem you should be aware of about oils is that you want the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 in your blood to be about 1-to-1 or at the most 2-to-1. In most Americans, it's 10-to-1 to 30-to-1. So in other words, way too much omega-6, way too little omega-3. And that abnormal ratio contributes to depression, to inflammation, to aging, to diabetes, to cardiovascular disease, and to cancer. And most of the reason Americans have that abnormal ratio is from the oils that they're getting in their diet, but these are refined vegetable oils.
Well, so with that, Dr. Feinsinger, you're a fascinating source of information, and your passion and all your contributions that you make are phenomenal. And I know we could probably go on here for hours, but our time has come to an end, and I look forward to doing this again with you and hope to have you back again and have more questions that you can help answer for people.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed meeting you all and wish you well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you, everybody, and have a great night. And keep watching for our weekly emails and our challenges, and love to hear how you're doing with the challenge every week. And we're here to support you in succeeding along the way. So eat plants and plants rock. So thank you, everybody. Have a great night. All right.